Welcome to the Jerry Ratcliffe Show. I'm Chris Graham, and we'll chat with Jerry here about, all kinds of stuff in UVA sports, mostly basketball this week, not a lot of football news. And maybe I'll start, Jerry, with this. I was thinking about this earlier today. UVA fans are probably feeling edgy because the Cavaliers have lost a couple of late this week. The loss to Pitt, the loss a couple weeks ago to Miami. You look up and down the ACC. Last night, Miami loses to Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech. Duke loses at NC State. Pitt, the team that beat Virginia this week, also beat North Carolina last week. It's like upside is right. Upside is right. Dogs and cats are sleeping together. I don't know what's going on here. It's just crazy how the ACC. We thought we knew where things were going to go before the season started, after the first couple of months of non-conference play, and now it's all up in the air.
Yeah, Clemson beat won in Blacksburg last night. And if you look, Pitt and Clemson are tied at the top of the ACC, undefeated in the league.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed that a month ago?
Who had that one right?
But you're right, and everything is topsy-turvy, and I think it just goes to show that how unpredictable this league is going to be the rest of the season, Chris. Doesn't seem to be any nights off. I mean, you said it, Virginia went down to Atlanta and just pecked Georgia Tech to death. I mean, just made them look terrible. And then Tech turns around and beats Miami. No rhyme or reason to any of that. And I just think there's not going to be many nights off in this league this year.
Of all those upsets, the only one that was on the road is the one you mentioned, Clemson winning at Virginia Tech, who's now lost 3 in a row after, the Hokies had gotten in the top 25 for 1 week earlier back last month. So putting our attention on Virginia then, the loss at Pitt, Virginia led that one by 13 at one point in the first half. It was 10 at halftime, got it back up to 12, 4 minutes into the second half. And then Pitt, Virginia went through a extended scoring drought and also couldn't get a stop in the second half. And very uncharacteristic to see. Pitt scored 45 points in the second half. And Tony Bennett was none too pleased afterwards.
No, he doesn't curse, but if he did, I'm sure he would have had plenty of words for that loss because of just the way they lost. Giving up 45 points to him is one of the biggest cardinal sins of the pack line defense that you can commit. And, they just didn't, a lot of people blame it on not having a rim protector there at the end, but, they could have had Jabbar back there and it would have made a whole lot of difference because they shouldn't have been getting to the rim in the first place. And that's where everything broke down, is Virginia just couldn't stop them from driving straight line drives to the basket, something that Jeff Capel saw on film and felt like that was part of his game plan coming in. They felt like they could drive the ball on Virginia, and they certainly did. They beat Virginia not only down the floor several times, but spread them out and drove to the basket on them. And, Shedrick, even had he been in there during that 8-minute stretch where they couldn't seem to stop him, but there's only so much he could have done if he had been in the game. And Cafaro was out with his foot was in a boot, so they were shorthanded as far as rim protectors go and physicality in that respect. But giving up 45 points in one half. I mean, how many times we said it and watched Virginia not give up 45 for an entire game, let alone in 20 minutes. And that 19-3 run was almost unbelievable. Virginia was up 44-32, and at the end of it, Pitt had taken a lead, 51-47. And Virginia just couldn't seem to get anything going. And they did have that mysterious, and they seem to continue to have these mysterious scoring droughts. Chris, it's been going on for 2 or 3 years now. where they just go 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes without a basket, or with limited baskets. And it's really hard to explain. It was especially with as many potential scorers as they have on the floor.
Yeah, Tony talked about that after the game too. He said he thought that Pitt did a good job of adjusting. Virginia, I mean, was really running the offense well. First 24 minutes of the game when they got that 44-32 lead. And he thought that Pitt did a great job switching on defense, switching on screens. And that seems a simple thing, but that's what they did. I think Miami did the similar thing back in the win down at Coral Gables a couple weeks ago. And, so there's that issue that, Virginia's got to come up with a solution to when the offense is being bogged down by that particular strategy, what to do. And then also, I mean, it's not like Tony Bennett and his staff wouldn't have themselves seen through self-scouting the issue that Jeff Capel mentioned. Hey, we see on tape that we can straight line drive on them, but hearing another coach say it out loud in a post-game press conference really makes it so that I'm sure a lot of attention is being put there by Tony and the coaching staff to try to rectify that situation.
Tony knows how to get his guys' attention in practice, because if they're not doing what he wants, they run. And there's no easier way to get people's attention than running. They can run you to death. And so I'm sure these guys are either paying attention or putting a whole lot of running in practice this week in preparation for Syracuse coming to town on Saturday. But that's Tony's way of sending a message. And I'm sure that as much as they spend or devote time to practice on defense, that it's probably multiplied some this week in practice. And they've just got to find some ways to shore things up there, because you can't, like Tony said, it doesn't matter what kind of offense or defense they're going up against. If Virginia doesn't play their style of defense and pay attention to the tenets that makes the pack line successful, it just doesn't matter, because you can throw anything out there and it's going to work.
I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'm thinking back to, I think it was the 2020-21 season when maybe that was the season that Virginia lost early to San Francisco. And
yeah, I believe it was.
I believe that was the second or third game of the season, and they had looked so good early that season. And what San Francisco did so well in that particular game was spread the floor. They played 5 high and basically dribble drive or backdoor cuts by guys without the ball. And it made me think, why don't more teams do this to Virginia? Because what the pack line defense does so well, it takes away the most basic play in basketball that everybody runs from YMCA ball all the way up to the NBA, the pick and roll. They double the pick and roll. They make you swing it around. Then they rush back, get to the guy rolling to the basket. So if you want to run the pick and roll, great. It's just going to bog the offense down, and there's a shot clock, and it's going to make you force up a bunch of bad shots with less time. But if you don't run pick and rolls, if you don't have guys in the post, and also the post to post double, getting the ball out of the post. So those are the two best ways to score: pick and rolls, and then feeding the post. And in Virginia, that pack line defense takes away both of those. If you don't worry about having a guy on the post posting up, and if you don't run pick and rolls, Virginia's got, that's what makes it tough. Caden Shedrick is off the floor not because he's not a good rim protector, but because if Pitt's running 5 high, he's got to guard somebody on the perimeter. And is that his best attribute defensively? Probably not. So that's the thing to me. I don't see why more teams don't do what Pitt did in the second half. They didn't even do it in the first half Tuesday night, but in the second half they ran it so well, and that's going to be the challenge for Tony if more teams say, hey, we can do what Pitt did. He's got to figure out a solution that makes them go back to more conventional offense.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, all the coaches in the ACC are paying attention to those two game plans that Miami and Pitt threw at them, and coaches are the biggest copycats in the world, so they're gonna figure it out pretty quickly. It'll be interesting to see what he comes up with. I don't know if Syracuse will do it or not, but because they have their own style of play, but it would certainly make sense if they at least explored that avenue. But as poorly as Virginia played, Chris, they still had a chance with 1:45 to go. The game was tied at 60 on McNeely's three. And they just made some critical errors down the stretch. They Shedrick was called by Ted Valentine on that illegal moving screen. I'm still not sure that was a good call. And
yeah, quote unquote moving screen, wouldn't call that.
Yeah, and McNeely had made a second three right there, which would have put Virginia up 63-60 with about 1:11 to go, and then Pitt scored on the other end inside and gave him a 2-point lead, and then Virginia had a shot clock violation. And then on the other end of the floor, it looked like Franklin made a good play knocking the ball off of Burton's leg, but they overturned that call and gave the ball to Pitt. And then by that time, it was less than 30 seconds left, and Virginia was having to foul to try to get, to try to keep them from running away with it or just holding the ball. But it wasn't like they didn't have their chances. They had some ill fortune. But you raised a good point, I think, in a story, might have been today or yesterday. I thought the thing that was missing throughout the scoring drought and in the last several minutes of the game was there just wasn't enough Reese Beekman.
Yeah, Beekman is a guy, this was the first loss for Virginia this season where you can't attribute it to Reese wasn't healthy. Reese he looked 100% Tuesday night. And I've been saying about Beekman since he, basically is early in his first year at UVA, and he's now a third-year player, that, boy, he's an NBA talent. You look at him, and he can do it all. Now, he needed to work on his outside shot. He's done that. I think he's shooting 47.8% from three, which is just astounding for a guy who, 2 years ago made 9 threes all season long. Yeah. And he hit a couple, in the game, in the flow of the game. Tuesday night, he banked the one in at the buzzer. But he's consistently the guy. When he gets the ball in rhythm, he's making those threes, which should then make it so that defenders 2 years ago, when he was only making 9 3-point shots, you could sag off him. Hey, I know he's not. I dare him to shoot the ball. Basically, you could say 2 years ago, and so you would sag off him, and that could neutralize his ability to get around you. He's so good off the dribble. Well, now he's making the threes, but he's still tentative with taking charge, so to speak. And I pointed out in that column that you read that Kihei Clark has more shots at the rim this season than Reese Beekman does, and shots at the rim for a point guard, and both those guys play point guard, are part of the indication of how much you're attacking the paint. Kihei also has more assists per game than Reese does. So Kihei is still the more aggressive of those two, attacking the paint, either to set up teammates for shots or to set up his own shot. And, we all love Kihei for what he's done, but Reese Beekman is an NBA level talent. And if he would show more of that, you would. I mean, he's shooting 62.3% at the rim. He's a great finisher. He just doesn't seem to have. I call it the inner Malcolm Brogdon in him. Malcolm Brogdon at Virginia, from first year to second year, he had that year off in between when he had the foot injury and had to miss his sophomore season. Between that first year, when we saw the promise that he had, and then when he came back from the injury, he was a guy that would say, and often did say, if a game needed to be taken over, he would be the guy to take it over. Reese, if he could develop that skill about him, that mindset about him, he would be a different level. He would be a Malcolm Brogdon level player.
And I think that might be what's separating Virginia from being a good team to a great team right now is they don't have that guy to take over a game.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to do it? They don't. Kihei is probably as close to anybody they have, and as far as taking over a game. But even he didn't do that at Pitt the other night. In fact, I think his last basket was with over 9 minutes to play. So a lot of times they'll at least get to the free throw line in those circumstances by, like you said, attacking the basket. But I think that's the one thing holding this team back is they don't have a player willing to take the game up. Mm-hmm. And I think I agree with you. I think Bigman would be the candidate I would select to do that. It's like Will Ferrell, you need more cowbell. Well, I think Virginia needs more Bigman.
More Bigman, yeah. I'm thinking of that game, and it was a loss for Virginia back in like 2015. I think it was the ACC tournament semifinal against North Carolina, and Virginia lost the game, but they were down like 20 late, not late, midway through the second half, down 20 to North Carolina, and Brogdon scored 18 Virginia points in a row. I mean, that was a talented team, a very deep and talented team, but Brogdon just said, and he got Virginia lost by 4. They had a chance to actually tie it late after being down 20 to a really good North Carolina team. Nobody, it doesn't seem, actually, I shouldn't say nobody. Kihei Clark's the guy who wants to be, who is willing to step up and be that guy. And nothing against Kihei. He's 5'9", 160 pounds. Reese is 6'3", a couple hundred pounds. Has all the athleticism in the world, has the NBA front office is drooling over him. The only thing missing is just whether he'll turn that button off, or see the light bulb go off in his head and say, I've got to be the guy, because he can be the guy. I also wrote about Ben Vanderplas, and we either get, I said this during the game the other night, had a couple people over watching the game with me. You can tell within a couple of minutes, either you're going to get the Vanderplas who can score 20 like he did against Miami a couple weeks ago, or you can get the Vanderplas who scores 0, I said, and has 2 or 3 fouls and doesn't, really do much other than that. It's either or. There's no, he averages right around 8 points a game, but you don't get 8 points a game out of him. You either get the really good Vanderplas or the very quiet Vanderplas. And we got the quiet Vanderplas the other night. Probably not a coincidence that was another loss for Virginia.
Yeah, and that's the surprising thing about him with me. I thought we'd get a lot more consistency from him. I thought he was akin to having a 4 or 5 star recruit because he had 4 years of college experience at a mid-major level, and where he had been very successful, and the kind of guy that would fit in well with a veteran team like this. And I don't know, maybe he's having a hard time adjusting to a new team, or what his role might be. I'm not sure, but the lack of consistency is really hurting this team from being all it can be. And we said that Armand Franklin was going to be one key. His scoring was going to be a key for them to getting to where they want to be. And I think he has stepped it up of late. He's done his job. They need the same thing out of Vanderplas. They don't necessarily need to get 16 or 20 out of him every night, but 8 to 10 would be nice. That's the difference in some of these close losses. Just, one guy having a decent night. And between the fact that they don't have enough big men, they don't have anybody other than Kihei willing to take over a game, and inconsistency from Vanderplas. I mean, if those 3 areas are not issues, then this team's probably undefeated.
It's exactly. I can sense a headline upcoming on JerryRatcliffe.com. More Beekman. More Beekman. No, but I looked through the game logs for Vanderplas. He's had 4 double-digit games and 6 games where he scored 3 points or less. That's the mark of inconsistency, unfortunately, for that young man. And I coming into the season after he committed to Virginia last year. I made the comparison. Man, he could be our Brady Manick. The kid who transferred from Oklahoma. They're both similar size, power forwards who can stretch the floor with their 3-point shooting. And Manick was the key for why Carolina got to the championship game last year. He still could be. Vanderplas still could be. Maybe it's an adjustment issue. I sense with him, with the young man, a little bit of, it's almost like, some guys can be this way. If he misses his first shot, it's almost like he gets a little antsy. He doesn't want to pull the trigger. And where that can't hurt the team and where it doesn't with Armand Franklin. And Tony Bennett said this about Armand after a recent game, that even when Armand wasn't scoring, he had a 7-game stretch where he only averaged 6 points a game after the really big game against Baylor earlier this season. Even then, he still played defense. He still did the things, the little dirty work kind of things. When you look at at least the counting stats for Vanderplas, when he's having, these games with 2 points or 3 points or no points, you also don't see rebounds from him. You also, you don't see steals from him. You don't see anything else positive from him in that respect. He's playing good defense, but you don't see the results of that in the counting stats. And so, it's hard to have a guy that you rely on, and they rely on Vanderplas, that if he misses his first couple of shots, he's going to shut himself down that night. And you can't have that. And especially at a key position, he's the 6th man for this team. You can't have a guy that you rely on that much, being that much on the edge.
Yeah, and plus, when they want to go small, they can put him actually at the number 5 spot, and because he does play decent defense, he's not a rim stopper by any stretch, but he can play most of a shorter lineup pretty solidly defensively. But that's a sad fact about this season, is when he's off. I mean, he's really off.
Yeah,
they can't afford that. They can't afford for a 6th guy to be off. And I wonder if that's going to open the door for more playing time for McNeely as we head further into ACC play, because McNeely seems to be making strides on both ends of the floor. I think he's been pretty solid on defense, and his 3-pointer seems to be starting to come alive a little bit. And they've got to have that other scorer out there on the floor, whether it's him or Vanderplas or whatever. But they can't afford for that one spot to be kind of vacant.
McNeely's a guy that his misses are the most impressive misses. Like when he misses a shot, he's not off to the left or off to the right, or he doesn't airball. I mean, everything is right on. As a guy who played basketball and was a whatever I did in basketball, I was an outside shooter. I mean, his shots, everything is like, back rim. I mean, it's or front rim. It's straight on. It's there. It just misses. I mean, when he misses, he just misses. He earned his playing time, I think, with defense. He's been getting consistent minutes since about the 2nd week of the season, even though he wasn't, consistently contributing offensively. I kind of agree with Dan Bonner. Noted this. I can't think of which broadcast it was. Maybe it was the Miami game a couple weeks ago, where basically his thinking is, hey, you're there because you're a great 3-point shooter. Too many times when either Reese Beekman or Kie Clark drives a lane and kicks it out to McNeely for a 3, his first instinct is to sort of pump fake and try to drive into the basket, drive into the lane. He's a 3-point shooter. He needs to. Dan's point was, you got to catch the ball and be ready to shoot, because that's what you're best at. And only then, maybe the second option is to, pump fake and try to get yourself in the lane. But because he's that good of a shooter, he just needs to have that shooter's mentality a little bit more. And maybe it's he's a freshman and he's trying to kind of earn that trust of his teammates and that kind of thing. But man, kid, you got it. We know you can shoot the ball. Start doing it for us.
Maybe he needs to spend some more time with Kyle Guy because
there you go.
I mean, because that's exactly what his strength was. I mean, there was no hesitation. It was as soon as it hit his hands, it was one of the quickest releases in basketball. It was gone. And I think it was Jim Larinaga the other night that said, I believe it was Jim Larinaga that said, man, anytime McNeely shoots the ball, if it didn't go in, I believed it was going in because it looked like it. And that's the way it was with Kyle Guy. If he missed, it was a shock to everybody, including him. And McNeely needs to have more of that mentality, I think. And I think he will. I think it'll come. I think part of it, I agree with you. I think part of it's probably just because he's a freshman and he's trying to earn that trust. And I think he has it now from his teammates and certainly has it from Tony. So I think that will just get better as the season progresses. And we'll see the best come out of him as his game develops, as the team develops. But I'm not worried about him at all. I think his game is going to come. I wonder if we're going to see more of Dunn as a result of Vanderplas's inconsistencies too. I don't know what's holding him back. I don't know if it's defense or what it might be, but certainly it's not athleticism. And we'll it's going to be interesting to see, how that develops in this as we go down the stretch as well.
I was thinking about Kyle Guy. Kyle Guy never met a shot he didn't like.
No. And if you can shoot like that, you shouldn't.
Bashful, he is not. He's still playing in Europe now. We maybe need to get the long line going. Malcolm Brogdon, get him in touch, mentorship way with Reese Beekman, and then Kyle, get him in a little therapy session with Isaac McNeely, and that might help this team out. But I was thinking, Jerry, about what you just said with Dunn. This is not well thought out. I had it just popped in my head as you said that. When Isaac Trout, the decision was made to redshirt him this year, Tony Bennett made it clear that that was going to be a month-to-month decision. And I think what the issue was is Trout had suffered some sort of an injury and was maybe not at the beginning of the season health-wise ready to start. And so, hey, we'll put the red shirt on him so as not to waste the year. But if we need him, he could be there and that kind of thing. Not knowing anything and not having heard a word, I'm just thinking out loud. A guy like that, if he's looking good in practice, it wouldn't surprise me if Vanderplas continues to struggle consistency-wise, that there might not be an option there to at least bring a talented young guy like Trout in, because Dunn certainly, yes, Dunn does steal minutes. He's been stealing minutes from Francisco Cafaro for quite a while now. I mean, basically ever since Francisco had to miss that game early in the season to play for Team Argentina, and Dunn got a lot of minutes against Monmouth. Dunn showed what he could do. He had a really nice game against JMU back in December. A consistency kind of issue with him a little bit too, but his potential is limitless, it seems. But those are a couple potential answers for Vanderplas if Vanderplas doesn't sort of work towards more consistency.
That's a good point. I hadn't even thought about the Trout option. Certainly, they could take that red shirt off of him anytime they want, and it would be interesting to know how he's doing in practice, and which I imagine pretty well. And I mean, he gives them another big body who can score, and that's a good notion to think about if things continue to if he continues to struggle like that. And I'm talking about Vanderplas, you would hope that him being a fifth-year guy that he would find a way to make himself a little more consistent. I don't know how you do that, but it's got to be done in practice, I would guess. But it's interesting to think that there might be another option out there if he can't find the right answers.
So that's I was thinking this too, Jerry. We're saying all this, and it sounds like, I mean, we've been glooming and dooming for about a half hour here. This is a team that's 10-3.
It's still a good basketball team.
they lost without their best player at 100% to the team that's going to be number one again this week in the polls after Purdue lost Houston. Right. A 2-point loss to Miami, a ranked team, and Pitt's going to be ranked soon. And in both those losses on the road, and that loss is by 3 points. So, I mean, this team is a decently healthy Reese Beekman, and then a couple of breaks in those 2 losses on the road in the ACC away from being unbeaten. And we've been spending all this time breaking down all the problems. This is still a pretty good basketball team.
Oh, no question about it. And Pitt is not going to be an easy out for anybody in this league the rest of the way. I was kind of joking, making reference to Jeff Capel going out like the old Western movies with the bad guy comes in from the east and buys a big ranch and wants all the other territories around it to the resistant ranchers. And so he just brings in a bunch of hired guns and they take care of the problem. Well, that's essentially what he's done at Pittsburgh. He couldn't keep players there. They've had 5, 6, 8 guys leave the program over the last 3 or 4 years in mass. So this time he said, well, hell, I'll just go out and get a new team. And he did. He's got 4 transfers from all over the country, and they're good players, and they're physical, and they're experienced, and they're aggressive. And he's got a good basketball team on his hands up there, and they're going to be hard to deal with. And Tony was, Tony didn't want to lose, but he was happy to see things working out for Capel, because Capel does do things the right way. And there's a mutual admiration society there between those 2 coaches. And Jeff Capel himself said it after the game. He said, there's nobody in this game I respect more than Tony Bennett. And there's nothing easy about preparing for them in any facet of basketball. So he was extremely gratified to be able to get a win over Virginia and stop that 8-game losing streak they had to the Cavaliers. And but you're right. This is a good Virginia basketball team. There's no reason to reach for any panic buttons or anything. They can do themselves some good Saturday when Syracuse comes down. I think Syracuse is ahead of them in the standings by a game. I think they just have 1 loss, 3-1, I believe, in the ACC, and barely won a squeaker against Louisville the other night. I think that was in Syracuse too, which, if I'm not mistaken. So Virginia's played pretty well against Syracuse in recent years, and so the game here will be a big one for a lot of reasons. One, just to snap this 1-game losing streak, and to make Tony Bennett the all-time winningest coach in Virginia history. I had a long interview with Ann Holland this week. Be writing that tomorrow for her talking about Terry Holland's, her husband's long bout with dementia and then Alzheimer's, and how their family has dealt with that, and the respect that he has for Tony Bennett and vice versa. Also, Chris, thanks to Jay James, at WINA, he dug up one of my old radio shows. I did the last interview with Terry Holland back in 2019. And I don't know whether to write a story with that or just run it, that interview on the website so people can hear it. It's a really great interview with Terry, with him talking about his career. And it was, you look back on it now, and with a lot of pride, that just to know him and be able to talk to him before he had the Alzheimer's issues. And she told me that last year when, they used to sit in the end zone down there across from the press section, down on the first or second row. And she told me when they left the last home game last year, I guess that was against Louisville? Can't remember.
We usually finish with Louisville, so I will say yes.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
But she said when they were walking out the door, he turned and looked there, and he said, "This will be the last game I attend here."
Mm.
And so he knew that that things were worsening for him, and so it'll be a heartfelt story and stuff, and I hope Virginia fans will embrace that. And I know David Teal did one already last week. I think I was going to wait and do mine a little bit closer to the actual game where Tony becomes the all-time winner, but try not to duplicate what David did, but just tell my own story about Terry and Tony.
I look forward to that. I'm sure a lot of people listening look forward to that as well. Being able to listen to it, and I'll encourage you. The editor in me says write that story too. You have something no one else has. The last interview, and that's awesome. And thanks to Jay James for finding that. Yeah, you mentioned that on the show last week. So that's great that he was able to find that and get that to you. So, Syracuse, Virginia, 5:00 tip, kind of a weird time tip for Saturday. JerryRatcliffe.com and AugustaFreePress.com will all be there covering the game. And look for the pregame coverage. We'll get you ready for the game, and then of course the postgame. Jerry, last thoughts, and I know among your last thoughts, we always like to thank the folks who helped make this possible.
Absolutely. And I had sometime tomorrow. We're doing this on Thursday. Sometime tomorrow or Saturday, I have another podcast with Dr. Siobhan Statuto, one of our favorite doctors over from UVA Sports Medicine, and talking about mental health aspects and how that the demand for that has grown in her office. She's back from she was one of, I think, only 2 people selected to go to New Zealand and Australia and talk about sports mental health in those countries. And she touches on that and the tragedy at UVA from November and how that's impacted not only student athletes, but staff and coaches and trainers and doctors and everybody else over there. And just the whole mental aspect of athletics and our general life. So you don't want to miss that. Some really interesting stuff from her. She's very passionate about. And I want to thank our sponsors, the Good Feet Store and Aberdeen Barn, UVA Orthopedics, and Ragged Mountain Running Shop. Go by and see those people if you have needs for their services, or if you want a good steak, or if you have any problem walking or any discomfort walking, running, go see the Good Feet people. They've got solutions for you. Ragged Mountain Running got all the equipment you need, and UVA Ortho, if you have problems, they can fix them. And again, Aberdeen Barn, my goodness, they're I think, Chris, you said you guys went by there the other night and tried to get in. They were so jam-packed, you didn't have a reservation. You couldn't even get in. So that just tells you what a great steakhouse it is. If you can't get in, man, it's call for reservations and Angela will take care of you.
Yeah, that's right.
I need to get over there myself. I'm yearning a good steak right now. So go by and see them.
Their steaks almost melt in your mouth. They're so good. They're incredible. So,
yeah.
The more we talk about it, I'm going to need one as well soon. So, well, thanks to Jerry, of course, and thanks to the listeners out there. If you have any questions, go to our website. You can email Jerry, email me directly. Questions, comments, story ideas, that kind of thing. Look forward to talking to you again soon.